Welcome to the Women Writing Podcast. I'm your book coach, Liisa Kovala. I'm a certified fiction and memoir book coach and the author of Like Water for Weary Souls, Sisters Winter War, and Surviving Struthof, and the Hygge House Nordic Cozy Mystery Series. As a Finnish Canadian, I also love my coffee. Take a coffee break with us as we chat about all things writerly with authors and publishing industry professionals. And don't forget to sign up for my Women Writing newsletter on Substack and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great content. In today's episode of Women Writing, I'm having a coffee break with Stephanie Weaver. Stephanie embodies resilience and transformation. With a rich career spanning museum storytelling, public health, and speaker coaching, she has worked across diverse landscapes from the San Diego Zoo to the White House. A world traveler who embarked on a solo journey through Southeast Asia at 28, Weaver has curated TEDx San Diego, coached hundreds of speakers, and authored 5 books that illuminate the power of personal narrative. She lives in Oceanside, California, with her husband and their golden retriever. Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm good, Lisa. How are you?
I'm so good. It's just lovely to have you here with me today. Coffee or tea?
Tea. Always. Yes.
I love it.
Well, I love coffee, but it has to be decaf. And I really love like an iced coffee with like whole milk and sugar. Yes. And so I just don't have that very often, but
I know that's like the dessert coffee, isn't it? It's the real treat.
The coffee ice cream. Yes. Or it tastes like coffee ice cream
for adults. I love it so much. Now I'm so excited to talk to you because you've lived some really interesting careers and work. And so I'm just fascinated by all of it. So I am going to ask you the question I always like to start with, and you probably know it already, which is like, when did you start writing? Is this a new thing? Is this something you've done all your life? What's that journey been like?
Yeah. So in 4th grade, I made my first book and I dug it out for you so you could see it.
It's beautiful.
So I guess the spark was there for a long time. Yes. I tried writing a novel like when I was 17, and I submitted a couple terrible short stories to some very good journals and got lovely, rejection letters. And I just think I wasn't kind of strong enough to deal with the rejection, and I didn't have enough of a drive. Like, I'm not a Stephen King who's going to send in 400 short stories before he gets one published. Like, that just wasn't me. Like, I just kind of really took it to heart and sort of curled up. But I did try writing a couple of different times, but it really was that I was a technical writer in the museum field for about 25 years. And that's the writing that I did, which was not about me, but I certainly did a lot of writing in that way.
Yeah. 100%. I think that's so interesting that, well, first of all, that's the cutest journal ever. And I love that you still have it. Yeah. I still have some pieces too that my mom put aside, and that, and then when she gave them to me, I thought, well, what do I do with these? But you can't throw it away now. It's been.
No, I can't. It's just like, oh, that little 4th grader,
Yeah. It's so delightful. And it just reminds you of like the kinds of things we're interested in at the time. And I do think that's true for a lot of writers, right? We start early. But I think it's interesting too, that you mentioned how often people, lose, I don't know what the word is. You might want to submit, but when you get some rejections, it's hard. And then it might just push you to do something else and not continue submitting. And then others have I don't know if they develop it or if they just have it, that kind of, it doesn't matter. I'll keep going. But that's hard. Like, as an introverted person, as a sensitive person, I think that was a really difficult thing. So I love that you said that, because I'm not sure that, I think a lot of people will resonate with that emotional, like, I don't want to do that.
Well, and I had, I was dealing with depression. I had poor self-esteem. And so it's easy to think my writing is me, and therefore, if you are rejecting my writing, you're rejecting me. Right. So it wasn't until I was working on projects where I would have 10 editors on a project, and I'd be like, well, this clearly isn't about me. It's just about getting this thing right for this exhibit or whatever. So that hardened my skin and helped me really appreciate good editors. Because also the first editor I had at a museum would just rewrite everything. So the whole piece would come back and it would just be completely rewritten and read. And you don't actually learn how to be a better writer if someone rewrites you. It wasn't until my next boss where she would say, this is not parallel construction. And I would be like, oh yeah, she's right. That isn't. How do I need to figure that out. So that's all parallel construction. And so she was the one that sort of got me to where I actually believed again that I had writing skills because I was so demoralized by the first boss.
Yeah, that's so good. Like, I mean, that second editor is more of a mentor in a way, right? Like pointing out things, but also letting you discover them and find them. And then that's a really like a teacher student kind of relationship, because I feel like when I was teaching high school, if I was only ever telling them how to do it correctly, they were never figuring out how to do it on their own. But I did need to point it out. But also if I'm just fixing it, that's just not going to really help. Right. So those editing skills are so, so important too, for writers to see like how they can improve their own craft with it. And so you were writing sort of nonfiction, things for the museum. But I mean, I think that really flexes your writing muscle too, doesn't it? Like even when you come to creative writing, there's a little bit of maybe differences. But
sure. I mean,
still,
you need me to write 350 words on giant pandas. I'm your girl.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, it's a very specific skill set to write for the public. It's usually about a 4th to 6th grade reading level, but the science or the information has to be correct, but it's also entertaining and interesting and engaging. And so there's a whole, I felt like I had really good skills in that area. And I started journaling when I was a teenager, and I journaled, for decades. That was more kind of like whining and complaining and, feeling sorry for myself, depending on what was going on. So I wouldn't say that was necessarily flexing any muscles, but certainly the work writing, for sure, I had to figure out, like, how do I convey this in this short amount of space? Because we know how many words people are willing to read in each paragraph because they've studied it.
Amazing, right? Well, and I even think that journaling is maybe not necessarily helping with the writing skills, but probably for a lot of people, it's getting the emotions on the page is useful, right? Like just
super helpful. Oh yeah. I mean, it was my main outlet for expressing myself for a very long time because I didn't feel like I had a voice. Like in my household, we weren't allowed to be angry. We weren't allowed to express opinions. So that was the only place where I could say exactly how I felt. And so until I could learn how to do that as an actual person, human, with my mouth open and words coming out, it's what worked for me for a long time.
Yeah. And I think that works for a lot of young people and adults too. I think it's such a valuable thing, but definitely the workplace setting where you have to produce and I'm assuming you had like some pretty hard deadlines that you have to meet. Like, you can just
the exhibition is opening on, June 27th. That's an absolute deadline, and the stuff's going to the printer or the producer. And so, that was certainly a great experience. And you learned about voice, which was not my voice. It was the museum's voice, if the museum set that. So, it was like a friendly expert or a science expert or, whatever it was. And that was helpful. And certainly brevity is helpful to learn. I think a lot of people, when Twitter started, found it really sharpened their writing because it was 140 characters and you had to figure out how to say what you wanted to say in such a short period of time. So those things are useful. And then now I'm a TEDx coach and those are short talks. So again, the words have to all really carry their weight. So there's nothing extraneous in there.
Yeah, I never thought of Twitter that way, but I think that's absolutely true, right? You want to say as much as you can in as few words as possible. And that makes you sharpen your language and makes you choose the word that is really holding the weight of what you're trying to say. I'm not a fan of Twitter now, but I think
I'm not on it anymore, but it was those brief, and depending on why you were there, like if you were there to communicate with other writers and people and share ideas and comment on things, then yes, it was a great tool. Yes. And then, whether it's Threads now or wherever else people are, or Substack is longer, obviously doesn't have the limit, but all of those places, depending on how you use them, can help us be better writers.
Yeah, I love that so much. So let's talk about the TEDx coaching, because I'm a huge fan of TEDx. And as a high school teacher, I used to show a lot of TEDx talks and spoken word poetry and all kinds of things. And they were great for conversation starters and writing prompts and discussion, or depending on the topic we're doing. Like there's just like such a myriad of ideas and perspectives. And I remember coaching my students to do presentations, and we would use TED Talks to be able to look at how people were conveying information and like having that timeline and how to present themselves and all of the things. So we kind of like pick them apart a little bit so that we could see what kind of skills we needed to go in front of the classroom. So I love that you have spent time coaching people how to do this. I think that's brilliant. And of course they would need a coach, because people need coaches to help them with all of those kinds of skills that are maybe new to them. So what were the kinds of pieces of advice that you gave speakers about TED Talks that maybe some authors might be able to take away?
Sure. So TEDx is, the independently organized events. So they're all over the world. Any day of the week, there might be 2 or 3 somewhere in the world now that we're sort of back to normalcy post-pandemic. And each event sets the time limit. So, I will, if I get hired by either an event to coach people, or I get hired by the individual, they'll tell me I've got 10 minutes, or I've got 12 minutes, or I've got 8. The shortest I've done is 3. The longest I've done is 15. Coached about over 300 people at this point. I started about 15 years ago. So, the main thing is it's a single idea. And that's the hardest thing for people to kind of get. The reason that those talks are so popular and that they've lasted so long and they've spawned TEDx is because it's a single idea, it was a short format, and the idea was supposed to make the world a better place, essentially. Yes. They were worth spreading is the tagline. Yes. So, it was helping people find what is that big idea that they want to talk about. And then sort of, usually there's an opening story, and then kind of 3 buckets of content is what I usually tell people. And then depending on the type of talk, sometimes they end with a call to action, sometimes they don't. But part of it is assessing your story. So if you're going to be speaking, there might be 3 different stories you could tell, and you want to look at the stories and say, well, is the story doing the work it needs to do? Is it getting the job done? So it might be a great story for a different talk, but it might not be doing that, the job it needs to do for that particular talk. And then I try to find a metaphor for each talk. It doesn't always work, but usually there's some kind of personal hobby or interest, or maybe their story that they have that really works to build the talk around, because then those talks have kind of a different layer of resonance. I had one speaker who was a marine biologist, and he had a favorite poem and got permission to use the poem, because you have to get permission if things are being broadcast on the internet. And so we framed all of his neuroscience and marine biology research around this classic poem, which was super cool. I've had people, fascinated, love high-heeled stilettos. I had a guy do scuba diving, magic tricks. I never know what it's going to be, but once we find it, that also sort of adds that extra layer. But essentially, it's the time limit is, a lot of people focus on that, like, oh my God, how do I do it? And it's like, once we know the structure of your talk, it can be 10 minutes, it can be 15 minutes, because you just add more stuff into the 3 buckets.
Yeah.
So that's a short version of what I do.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. I used to say that to my students too, when they were doing, in grade 9, their little presentation was 5 minutes. And by grade 12, it was 20 minutes. And every year we sort of added time. And, the initial thought is, I could never do that. Like, I'm like, you're just adding a little bit more information about the thing.
Right.
Grade 12, they were, quite happy to go longer if they were allowed to, right?
Yeah.
They have so much to say on the topic.
Yeah,
I think that's so wonderful. And how did you come about finding that kind of role to be able to speak to people and coach them through this?
So I started as a volunteer. So all TEDx events are run by 100% by volunteers. So I volunteered for our local event, TEDx San Diego, for 5 years. And we had a training on Skype. This is pre-Zoom. And the person was going through this process of, well, you find the one single idea and then you kind of edit everything else away. And she's going through this, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is what I've been doing in museums for the last 20 years, developing these exhibition scripts, because the whole team has to agree kind of what's the one thing we want people to walk away with. And then you decide what objects are going to be in there, if they're going to do videos, how many, they're called panels, how many signs there's going to be. And so when we got off the call, everybody else who was going to be coaching looked sort of shell-shocked. And I said, oh, I actually know how to do this, you guys. Like, this is kind of what I've been doing. So if you need help. And so my boss goes, well, great, because we just signed Richard Dreyfuss, the actor, and he doesn't like to work with men. So you're up. And I was like, oh, okay.
You're up.
So thrown into the deep end of the pool with Richard Dreyfuss, the actor and activist, who I've been watching my entire life, obviously. Yes. And then, 6 or 7 other really fascinating people. And so I wouldn't say I was, my best version of coaching that first year, because I was still learning it. But by 2 or 3 years in, I was getting queries from like, would you, coach my boss? Would you coach so-and-so for me? So that's how I got started. And then a lot of conferences started doing TED style tracks. So they would hire me for the whole track. So that's how I have a business 50 years later.
Oh, that's so cool. And I love that the first person you work with is Richard Dreyfuss. Like, of course. I mean, why not just dive right in? And I mean, must have been such a special experience, right? As a first. Yeah,
it was fun. And he's super bright, really fast mind, hard. He has ADHD. It's public knowledge, so hard to focus him. But but so that was my job, and it worked out. I had this very niche skill set over here, and it actually fit into this very niche thing over here. And so I was like, okay, this is awesome. And I've worked with so many incredible people from all over the world. It's just been a really amazing home-based business. So yeah,
it's great. And it's just, I'm always fascinated by the fact that like your workplace experiences had really set you up for those opportunities, and the fact that you were open to those opportunities, right? Because it could have been easy enough to say, well, I'm just going to volunteer in this way, but I'm not going to put myself out for that. And, but just having those experiences probably allowed you some confidence to go to the next step. And you don't know that when you take a job, right? You know where you're going to land or how it will, affect your future possibilities.
Yeah, the year I turned 50, I decided I was going to say yes to everything within reason. And so it really kind of shifted my whole approach to life. And I absolutely say no to stuff now, but it was a great way of approaching a year, kind of a watershed age year. And certainly that saying yes to that really changed my life and my work and everything. Yeah. And made me a better writer, because I'm obviously editing people's stories and their talks. Yeah.
Amazing. I had a similar experience. I don't remember how old I was, but within the last several years, I had 1 year, which was yes to everything. And 1 year following that, which was no, unless I really wanted to. And it is a great teacher, isn't it? To not only put yourself out there and do something that might feel like a risk, but also to empower yourself to be able to say, no, I'm drawing a line on that. That's not for me right now. I'm going to focus on this other thing. So I think that's like kind of a cool way to think of your year as like, okay, what is my intention here and what it is that I want to do, and put boundaries around that, whatever they might look like. Right.
100%.
Yeah. I love it so much. Okay. So you have a book, you've written several books over the years.
5 books. Yeah.
5 books. Can you, we're going to lead up to the most recent one, but what was the first book you wrote?
So it was called Creating Great Visitor Experiences, a guide for museums, parks, zoos, gardens, and libraries. And it was published by an academic press in 2007. And it was work that I had been doing to try to help cultural institutions do a better job of understanding the experience that they were creating, so people would want to come back and support them and become members. And so it was very much a synthesis book. I took a lot of information and created this 8-step process, and then taught that process as a consultant for years. And it was super fun. I had not thought that I was going to write books. That wasn't kind of on my radar. And one of my friends who was in the field, I he was driving through the neighborhood, and he stopped in the middle of the intersection to talk to me in his little red Toyota truck with his tiny little dogs barking. And he's like, "When are you going to write your book?" And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, when are you going to write your book?" And I thought, I have a book? Like he clearly thought that was coming from me. And so I thought, oh, okay, maybe I'll do that. And then I had a back surgery where I couldn't work or do anything. So I had a zero gravity recliner, and I had my laptop, and I wrote my book in a zero gravity recliner. So, and that was the first one. And then the second one was a pet loss memoir called Golden Angels that I self-published through Kickstarter. That was kind of when my first dog, my kind of heart dog, died, and then we got our second dog, and I really wanted to kind of help other people through that really painful process. And then books 3 and 4 were related to migraine headaches. So I was diagnosed late in life, 53, and there just wasn't a lot of good resources out there. So I started working on, kind of a plan. I thought I was going to maybe have an online course, and I ran some people through, kind of tested it. And then I had written a book proposal and ended up selling the book. So, they're all self-help how-to kind of genre, really. And it's all about kind of taking my experience and helping people in some way. So whether that's, there was a little bit of personal narrative in the first book when I talked about like being able to stay at this resort in Bali and the kind of customer service that we got there. And then each book had a little bit more personal narrative in it, but only because it served the reader, essentially.
Right.
The last book is very personal. So
very personal.
Totally different. Yeah. Totally different shift. Yeah.
And I love that you're drawing on all your own experiences to be able to write these books that are going to help other people. Yeah. So do you think that the more recent one, which is Bittersweet, How to Heal Yourself When Your Family is Broken, do you think that not that you needed to, but it was helpful to have written those other books beforehand and sort of move towards that more personal narrative instead of saying, okay, I'm going to write this now. Like sometimes I think we need time and we need distance.
Yeah, I'll answer that by saying when I turned in the migraine manuscript for the first book, which was kind of a lifestyle guide, like helping people assess figure out their own triggers and make changes if needed, if they could. And then had a fair bit of personal narrative in it because it was kind of a medical mystery. Like I was given this sheet of information and I was like, I've never heard of this before. And 3/4 of what was in my refrigerator, I wasn't supposed to eat anymore. And felt horrible. And excuse me. So I kind of delved into that. And so when I sent it in, the first thing I said to the editor was like, look, if this doesn't work for the book, we can cut all of it out. Like I'm not precious about anything. Like if you don't think this works for the reader to learn my story, that's totally fine. She goes, oh no, I want more. I want more details. I'm going to ask you for more of this, more of that. So there was a time where she said, can you, give me an example of this here? And I said, well, there was this time, like I was so sick when we were coming back from the chiropractor and I was nauseous and our street was closed because they were doing construction on it. And I threw up in my neighbor's front yard with a bunch of construction workers watching because I couldn't make it to the house. She goes, yeah, put that in. Yeah. Well, I didn't need the world to, or however many people would buy my book, to know that had happened to me. Right. But it told the reader, I understand what you're going through, that these things happen to us when we're ill and we don't have control over them. And it's embarrassing. And, so it wasn't that I was opposed to personal narrative, but it was so different than the kind of writing I'd done before. But this book, Bittersweet, the genesis of it was, so my experience, Lisa, about writing books is that they show up and they demand that I write them. Right. And I don't necessarily have the skills to do it. And it's maybe a different genre. And it's like super inconvenient. Like really, I wish it would work a different way for me. Like I know people are like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to plot this out. And I've got a strategy and I know my audience. And I'm like, yeah, everyone's different. And I don't, I had an agent for the last two. I couldn't get an agent for, it's just not, it's not economically, a great way of going, but it's how it works. So they sort of make me write them. And so what happened was my father had passed away. My mom was dying. We were cleaning out her assisted living apartment, which a lot of people our age have had this experience. And I came home with her recipe box, her wooden recipe box. And it just had my whole life in it and her whole life in it and our family's life and all of our stories and all the places she'd ever lived. And I thought, oh my God, there's so much in here. What do I do with this? And so I was waiting for the call that she'd actually passed away, because she didn't while I was there. As part of the story, she was very stubborn and very German. And so I just started writing about the recipes, thinking, oh, maybe I'll put this on my food blog. You know, I can write about these different recipes and memories and stuff. And then it was 15,000 words of something. And I was like, oh, okay, I think this is a memoir, and I don't know how to do that. And I had not done creative writing since, you know, college. I'd taken screenwriting, but that was it. And so I had to find a class. Thankfully, there was one going in San Diego at the time. And then spent the next basically 6 years trying to find the real shape of the story, the real point of the book. Initially, it was, I wanted to understand my difficult relationship with her.
Yeah.
And then eventually I realized it was really a story about family estrangement. And that's how I sold the book in the form that it is because estrangement is kind of in the zeitgeist now and people are talking about it. And so that made the book saleable, which is good because you want people to buy it if you're going to bother to put it out.
100%. Right.
But it was a very long, difficult process because I really literally did not know what I was doing. And the first 30, 40 drafts were terrible. So, and, you know, I'm not saying that to be, you know, make less of myself. No, they were objectively bad. So I knew it was like, no, this is boring. I'm bored and it's my story, you know. So just trying to find like what it was meant to be. And that's here we are. So
and here we are. Well, there's so many things there that I find fascinating. And one is just the fact that the idea that ideas come and they demand your attention for whatever reason, whatever time in your life. So when you were young, it was journaling and it was work related and all the different iterations of that. And then here is your mom who's unwell and you know her time is coming. And oh my goodness, to get that box. And I also have seen, like, my mother's 93. She has handwritten recipes and like just the handwriting, just the I always think about like things that have spilled on the recipe card and you know, all like just the all, you know, and you know, you've had that at celebrations and very like, there's so much attached to these, you know, day to day things that women used all the time that didn't think twice about them, but now hold this intense memories for us. Like, I think that's incredible, but also that you, that you went through the process, which a lot of people go through, that I think is sort of unexpected for new writers. Like, if you've never written anything before and it's your first go, like, you obviously were a seasoned writer already, but that idea that when you're writing a memoir, it's not going to happen overnight. Like, it takes years sometimes. There are a zillion terrible drafts. Like, it's just the reality, and you're learning how to tell the story. And what you were saying about structure, even like, how do I convey this? And why am I doing it? What's my why? All of those things, I think new writers maybe aren't thinking about yet until they're in it. And then they're like, okay, you know what folks are talking about, right? It's a process.
Like, I hadn't even read a lot of memoirs, and I didn't even know the difference at that point between autobiography and memoir. Yes. And autobiography, for those of you who aren't 100% sure, is basically a chronology of your life. And a great example is if you've read or seen Bruce Springsteen's memoir, it's an actual autobiography. It's like, here's a chapter about this album and then this album and this album, and it's way too long. There's way too much in it. I'm sure for his fans it's super cool, but I was like, these 10 chapters could have been like special things on his website. But if you see the movie about him, it's a perfect container. It's one album when he was having a nervous breakdown. He was living in this house in New Jersey and he was struggling with his relationship with his father. So that's the difference between autobiography and memoir.
Yes.
And I thought the movie was great. It didn't do as well as I would have expected, honestly, but it was a phenomenal. As a writer watching that, I was like, oh yeah. And I didn't even know when our teachers were talking about a container, I was like, what are they talking about? Like, I felt really dumb, you know, but you know, it's like Cheryl Street's Wild is the container is her walk.
That's
And you
right.
have books. So mine, I was like, okay, I tried the 8 days I spent at my mom's bedside, and that didn't work. And I tried just using the recipes, and that didn't work. And I tried, starting one place and then starting another place. And do I include this thing where I did this side quest with my brother? No, that's not really. But it wasn't until I found the estrangement piece that it was like, oh, the book has to start here.
Hmm.
The recipes don't make sense anymore.
Right.
They're still in the book because each
Yeah.
chapter is framed around a recipe or a food, and there's the titles of the
Okay.
chapters are food related.
Yes.
But that actual initial impetus for the book didn't need to be in the book. And that I think is
Right.
something that people also don't know. I mean, there's that phrase about kill your darlings. It wasn't
Hmm.
that it was my darling necessarily, but I just couldn't imagine, like, what do you mean that the recipes aren't in the book when I wouldn't have the book if I hadn't brought the box
Right.
home,
Right. Right.
But I had a friend who read it a bunch of times, and he kept saying, Steph, I don't think you need the recipes. I think the
Right.
story's really strong. And I just couldn't see it until that
Right.
last iteration, which was the 12th restructuring and the 90th draft of this book
Yeah.
over 8
Yeah.
years.
Incredible. Well, and that's true too. Like when you have somebody else who's reading it and seeing it from a new perspective, a fresh perspective, they can see what you can't anymore and and be able to say that you don't need it. Like, and it was a powerful thing for you to have and to give you that the starting point, but it ends up being something different and perfectly fine. We can let
Right.
those things go. Yeah, it's just I think memoir is probably one of the most challenging kinds of writing to do because it's so personal. And there's maybe a desire or, an instinct to write everything, but you really can't. Like you do have to focus on the thing, the point, the why of it. Um, and that's hard to get to, but I'm very excited about this story. I think it'll be lovely and I think folks will benefit from it as well as your other pieces and everyone. So where can people find you if they want to go online and find you someplace and get your
Yeah.
book? And when is the book out?
The book was out last month in April.
In
So
April.
it's out now, and which is awesome. So stephanieweaver.com is my website. You can find all of my books there. You can sign up for my Substack, which is how Liisa and I met.
Yeah.
I do a weekly thing I recommend a book and a movie or TV show and write a thematic little piece around those two things. And yeah, all my books are on there. So you can, there's links to everything. And yeah, I'd love to have people sign up. There's some little freebies if you sign up for my Substack. And if you do end up buying Bittersweet, message me because there is an actual PDF full color cookbook that goes along. The companion
Oh,
cookbook is available as a gift if you purchase it. So do reach out
oh,
so I can send it to you.
that's so great. I
Yeah.
love that you found a way to use them in that manner and share them. And I think it's so special. So everyone should follow you on Substack for sure and your journey and all of the things. I really appreciate you coming to chat with us today.
Thank you
And
so much for
you've
having me.
had, like I say, such fascinating experiences. And I love how they've become different types of writing for you over the years, but all kinds of writing that is helpful to other people and helping uplift them. So I think that's brilliant. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Thanks for having me, Liisa.
Oh, my pleasure. I believe writers need sisu, strength, courage, and determination to get their projects done, and I can help you access your sisu. Are you working on a novel or memoir? You don't have to do it alone. Join us in the Women Writing Circle. We meet bi-weekly for 90 minutes to get pages done. Or consider applying for an upcoming group book coaching program to develop the foundational elements of your story in a supportive community. These 8-week-long programs include weekly coaching calls, goal setting, craft discussion, and personalized feedback on writing tasks. If you'd prefer to work one-on-one, contact me about one of my coaching packages at lisakovala.bookcoach.com. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to have a coffee break with us at Women Writing. Don't forget to subscribe to Women Writing on Substack. If you like this episode, share it with someone who needs a writing break and a little inspiration. Happy writing! Thank you to Michael Jensen for his original music and editing, and to Mia Jensen for the logo design.